Welcome to the newest edition of 42 Stories Anthology Presents. We have one of our Story of Excellent Award winners. Welcome, Rana.
Hi, well, thank you.
So here's a draft of, just a draft of the cover. What's your first impression?
I love it because it's got this kind of urban gritty feel that I tend to like. It's an aesthetic that I enjoy. Yeah, I think it looks great. And I think it's got a lot of diversity too. So I feel the stories are probably going to be quite diverse in this anthology.
Yeah, definitely. With 42 chapters of
Mhm.
42 short stories and 42 of this and that. Yeah. And then we have 42
Yeah,
pictures and yeah.
yeah.
Hmm. So thanks for that. That's a good way to put it. So as I said, we're interviewing you today, and here's our logo that you'll start seeing in a lot more places. But
Mhm.
I'd like to talk about your story. Could you tell readers about it? Readers, what viewers? Yeah, viewers about it. Uh,
God, it's really funny because when I had never written microfiction before, and I just kind of during the pandemic was signing up to these contests for 100-word stories, and they would you'd get various types of prompts, and so I started asking friends and family to give me just random prompts
hmm,
that I could write short stories from, and so this one was inspired by a prompt. I can't remember what it was, to be honest. It might have been something like putting on a glove.
hmm.
Um, but someone, yeah, a friend had given me a prompt of something having to do with maybe putting on a glove and dystopian as the genre. So I wrote that as a 100-word story initially and then boiled it down to 42 afterwards.
Oh, well, really, you're not lucky, and everyone else in the book is lucky because every time you submitted something, I wanted to accept it. But
Oh,
luckily, there were judges who
yeah,
picked the
yeah.
stories aside from just me, so that we could have as many writers as possible. Because I really liked your work. So,
Thank you. I appreciate that.
so how about you give this story a read so that
Sure.
people can hear why I like your work? You're a great writer, and we
Thank
should share
you.
it. Yeah.
All right. So this one's called Putting on a Glove in an Empty Parking Lot. Meredith approached her car avoiding shadow bombs. Her implant updated their location daily. Callousness had won her that privilege in the wake of the love ban. Worn leather against her skin grazed a distant memory of caresses. She cried and detonated from within.
Yeah, it's really deep, I think, and you do so much with just 42 words. And the background story that you mentioned really fits with that, where it was a prompt, and now it's
Mm.
all kind of making sense. Why don't you tell viewers, I got the word right that time, our your bio this time.
Sure. So I'm born and raised in Montreal, or to be specific, this a suburb of Montreal, Quebec. And yeah, kind of lived a little bit in different parts of Canada and then moved off to Iceland to do a master's degree in coastal and marine management. And so I spent up until the pandemic came around about, roughly those 10 years of my life there. And in the context of that, I published, had a few like academic publications. I did some independent research. I've been in social services most of my life. I've kind of branched off now and I'm doing editing, but yeah, I did some work in social services and was doing kind of parallel to my studies, was working with a community that I was living in on sort of issues touching maritime culture and things like that. So I published a couple of papers in relation to those subjects. And afterwards, I started getting back into creative writing in a bit more seriously again with the start of the pandemic because I had all this time to put into it.
Hmm.
And yeah, since then, I mean, I'm slow to publish. I'm getting microfictions published here and there, but I've been entering contests and I'm getting a little bit more visibility. I got a couple of long lists and shortlisted works, so I'm gaining a bit of traction there. So that's pretty much the sum up of my history with writing at any rate, background in writing.
So those curious can also find more of your works in the anthology because we picked four, I believe. The other
Mhm.
ones are, I should put these back on. Uh, Got them over here. So now tell me about this man who visits you that's in the monster category without a, how do I say that again?
Shidduch.
Shit up. Okay. There are many troubles. And when we picked that story, I knew what that meant because I looked it up.
Mhm.
But what is that, a shit up?
It's like when Orthodox Jews kind of say, I mean, look, I'm not in the religion and I'm not an expert of it either, so I don't know exactly how it plays out, but it's kind of just when they're kind of setting up, say two young people, a guy and a girl, a man and a woman, to sort of test out if they have chemistry or can get along in the context of a marriage and arranged marriage. So it's sort of like, I guess, the dating process,
It's
is the
funny.
shidduch, getting to know the other person.
It's funny that I forgot what that was, as I'm Jewish. My brother, who's gonna probably watch this video, is going to be like, "How dare you?"
Yeah, right.
Well, your other story is speaking of siblings, codependency. Codependency
Mm,
is immoral and bloodthirsty, right?
mhm.
Yeah, or yeah, it's immortal. I said it wrong during the and during when we practiced a bit too. Yeah, it's
Are you
always
sure it wasn't
trendy.
a silent T?
Yeah,
You're just
that must be
pronouncing a
it.
silent T. Yeah.
Yeah, well, the truth is since I'm studying Japanese, I'm forgetting English.
Right. Yeah.
I
Yeah. I
try
know
to
how
hide
to.
it, but
Mhm.
that's what's going on, and I can hear it in my voice when I speak during these interviews.
Mhm.
Did you feel any of that when you were overseas? Kind of a loss of
I
identity.
did. I did, but it wasn't so much English, because English was always kind of like my, when I was living in Iceland, right, I was learning Icelandic, and English was sort of the language I fell back on, and a lot of people do speak it, so that was fine. But I grew up with French, like I speak French equally well to how I speak English. And I started losing that while I was in Iceland, because
Oh,
there were maybe two, three people in the community I lived in who knew some French, but I wasn't using it regularly like I am here in Quebec, right? So I could hear it in my accent when I returned here that my French had, like, I don't want to say degenerated, but I just had more of a foreign accent and I would forget words and things like that. So
okay.
yeah.
And so you mentioned that you're in Montreal. So I guess
Yeah.
that answers the next question. Let's just go to the next one then.
Mhm.
Where is your writing space?
I mean, largely at my desk. I need total silence to be able to write comfortably. So it's at my desk, closed off from the world. Sometimes I'll go to a library if I need a change of scenery and just to shake things up a little. But yeah, just home writing space. But it's boring.
Well, it's good
Boring.
to have silence. They say that
Yeah.
multitasking isn't real. A lot of research
Yeah,
lately.
I've heard that. Yeah. Hmm.
And a library is a wonderful idea. I don't think anyone said that yet. But yeah, that's
Oh,
great.
really?
Quiet.
Huh.
And yeah, I haven't heard that one yet. So it's a great suggestion that hopefully viewers will take if they're interested in that. Because it's
Hmm.
free and quiet. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, yeah.
Who are some authors that you might find at a library that it happen to inspire you?
Wow. Well, I mean, I think that to date, I still think of The Never Ending Story by Mikhail Ende
Oh,
as
good one.
my favorite book of all time. I had seen the movie as a kid, and then when I was 12 years old, I discovered that there was actually a book
Yeah.
that the movie was based on, and I read that, and it's just, there's this kind of recurring theme of, stories that don't end. Like basically everything in life is kind of a story, and you don't get the endings to all these micro stories that pop up within the novels. So that really struck me as a kid, and it informs a lot of how I think about writing and storytelling and just literature in general nowadays, just that everything is like so storied. So that was a huge inspiration. And I think in more recent times, there's a Canadian author named Heather O'Neill who she's from Montreal actually originally. I don't know where she's based now, but she wrote a book called Lullabies for Little Criminals that was very inspiring to me as well, because I could recognize a lot of my own experience in it, and my own experience of the city and things like that. So, and she's just a fantastic writer too. Like the way that she can take the voice of a child and run with it is just phenomenal. So she's definitely one. Um, Otherwise, I've been reading a lot of nonfiction, which we may not want to get into, because I've been reading a lot of like anarchist, you know,
Research.
political changes and stuff like that. Yeah, and that's really firing me up. But yeah, no, I'd say Mikhail Ende and Heather O'Neill are two of the big ones. So.
Oh, okay. I took a memo for the second one because I haven't read that, but the Neverending Story is definitely a winner for anyone who
Oh
hasn't
yeah.
read it. It's a wonderful book, and
Oh, and The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy too, right? Like all of
yeah, of
those.
course,
I mean that yeah, hugely informs my humor writing for sure.
yeah. I'm
It was
not.
what drew me to this project, actually. I saw the 42, so like when I saw the concept for this, I was like, I need to be a part of that.
Thank you. I'm glad that some people felt that way. And I
Yeah.
was surprised when people asked me about Jackie Robinson because that didn't even come to my mind until
Oh, okay.
the writers brought it up. It was always
Mhm.
about the it being the answer and people giving their answers to the questions,
Mhm, mhm.
what it was formed from. But are any of your family members writers?
My mom actually, yeah, she did a bit of a stint as a freelance journalist, and she's written a memoir and then another book that kind of collects together some short stories and reflections and things like that. So she actually was, you know, I wouldn't say pushed me, like it wasn't against my will or anything, but she put me into writing workshops as when I was a kid because she's an English teacher as well, right? So she was
Oh,
connected to all these sorts of like resources, and she put me through a lot of like just sort of activities and workshops and social things I could do around writing when I was younger, and that was hugely influential to me.
hmm. Oh, I just want to mention to people watching that this is not an image of someone you know. This is an AI generated photo
I
from Free Pick, which is where I get these pictures, in case anyone's wondering. You don't know
don't
these
think I look
people.
much like any of those women, so.
Um, well, yeah, AI is a good thing, but sometimes it brings out these weird photos. What's
Mhm.
something that you would like the human race to stop? Something that might appear in your writing?
I maybe was alluding to this earlier with mentioning that I read a lot of like sort of anarchist
Hmm.
stuff. I'm very much a questioner of the status quo on many levels, and I think that, and I mean, this is like not just, it's not to say like, oh, people are dumb and they don't, think things through. I've seen people, some of the most intelligent people I know, just like take for granted some piece of information they came across on the internet or something like that, So I think that I would like for people in general, myself included, to just stop doing anything uncritically. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? And stop kind of accepting things that we're fed, because I think we are being fed a lot by, whether it's governments or the mainstream media or what I call the economic elite, right? Like the rich folk who somehow have us, but I'm talking like uber rich, right? Who have us believing that this is just like where we're at in life, that we can't do anything to change problems. I don't know. I think there's just a lot that kind of maintains this status quo that we're living in now that we don't question, because it's difficult to, of course. It's difficult to overturn our accepted beliefs about things. But I would like for that to happen. I mean, if I can phrase it in a positive way rather than, what I would like people to stop doing, it's what I would like for people to do is kind of move towards more of a sort of like intellectual revolution and how we think about the ways our societies are run nowadays and things like that. So I think that does come out in my writing, and in some places, not so much in others. I'll write pieces that aren't really, don't have a political bent or questionings like that.
Hmm. I think that's why Schwarzenegger's book Be Useful really appealed to me because he
Mm.
seems so real for a world leader, someone out
Hmm.
there who kind of has a voice that people listen to. And I listened to the audiobook and he just sounds really sincere and he has a message and he wants to help the world. And I think that people like him should really stick out more than what does, which is propaganda a lot of
Yeah,
times.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But if you
That's
ever read the
interesting. I
book,
haven't.
definitely recommend it.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna make a note of that because I would like to.
Yeah, since you're into that kind of topic for a positive
Yeah.
spin, that book Be Useful, I think is really a good one. But on editing, I'd like to know more about that because your process seems great with how you can form with 42 words alone. How's your editing go? Do you do it solo? Do you do it with a group?
In general, I do it on my own. I do edit professionally, so I'm very picky about, you know, editing per se. But I do ask for critiques from, I have like a couple of writers groups that I'm involved in. And I also just get people in my surroundings who don't write or edit really to read them, because I want to get a general sense also of what a reader will take from this or think works or doesn't work. So I do get people to read my work and just give me some notes. But in terms of like the actual editing process of like, what word I want to replace by what other and things like that, I do very much on my own. So.
That totally makes sense. And it's interesting how you go. It's not just about editing, but it's also about the story itself. So you take other people who might just be readers and they read it. It's a great idea too.
Yeah, yeah. And I do want to say actually for the winning story, that was one of the ones, that I wrote like very early on when I had started doing creative writing again. And I had that one, I had put it up in a critique group that I was in online, and I think it is a much better story because of some of the help I got and insight I got from other writers in that group. So just, yeah, I wanted to underline that because it's not just, that was definitely not a piece that I just kind of put together where everything fell into place, right? Like it had been rearranged many, many times. And I remember this one writer in particular in that group telling me the way I see microfiction is kind of like puzzle pieces, you know? And I ran with that idea and started thinking of it more as like a combination lock where like all the sort of right elements have to combine in a certain way to like unlock the actual story itself. So yeah, so that was just really a great experience to have that feedback on, you know, a 42 word piece from a bunch of other writers.
Hmm.
Because usually people will say something like, oh, this is great, you know, so much said in so few words, and it's sort of like generic microfiction feedback, but I got really, really helpful reads from people in that group.
Hmm. Yeah, sometimes you never know what someone's going to say. It just depends on the
Mhm.
group. But yeah, it sounds like you had a good pair of readers.
Mhm.
When you get beyond that into the actual story, what inspires you to keep writing?
Um, what inspires me to keep, like while I'm writing a story?
Hmm. Or just what inspires you to write?
What inspires me to write in general is just, you know, I'm really inspired by real life, and the more so, the
Hmm.
more I've been reading nonfiction as well, you know, because I've read these historical texts recently where you're like, what, people actually did this stuff, like that whole, you know, thing about truth being stranger than fiction. I'm seeing more and more the older I get how true it is.
Yeah.
And so I'm just really inspired by all the sort of different kinds of people and characters. And like I was saying earlier, I think everything is very storied in life. So I just find that really inspiring as a point of departure for writing. And then I think what inspires me to keep writing is that once that I actually get into the nitty gritty of working on a piece, I just love prose. I love language and I love prose, and I love like playing with words and rhyme and sentence structures and seeing how they all can fit together to make something unique.
Hmm. It's great. Yeah,
Mm.
so it sounds like you get really passionate about it and you like the challenge. So this shouldn't say BAM here. That's from the blog, a little part of it that the users are going to say. But yeah, I got when you see the blog, that BAM part makes more sense. Why don't you tell viewers 42 words of inspiration?
Okay, I'm just gonna read this off the blog actually.
Good idea.
Because I don't know if I can keep track of 42 words spontaneously spoken.
Same
So
here.
yeah, so my answer to that was everywhere you look, there's a story to be told, and you may be the only person to tell it. Keep open eyes, ears, mind, and heart. Often your story will choose you, and it'll be up to you to reveal its truth.
Yeah, that's great. That one gels with me too. So if the advice helps someone and help one person at least, then hopefully more people hear it and gets
Yeah,
them out there writing. Where can people find you on social media?
I'm a little bit of a social media ghost, to be honest, but I have a LinkedIn page. I have 50 word stories. I've got a couple of so that's not really social media, but if people want to get a taste of what I've been up to writing wise, I have a couple of pieces up on 50 word stories. What else? I've got academia.edu. You can access my academic publications there. And I started putting it's very slow to build up, but I have a Medium page where I'm putting up pieces that are either kind of more experimental or that have just been rejected too many times for me to bother trying to get them published anymore. So I'm self-publishing them up there. So it gives a bit of a flavor for, you know, what I do.
Good
I
idea.
think that's it, yeah.
Yeah, I followed you on Medium, so
Oh,
so
great, thank you.
so you got
I have
one.
like 7 followers or something, so
They got eight.
yeah, yay.
I didn't know they had an app, so I downloaded the app and then saw that you had it, and I go, okay, yeah, why not? Yeah. So
Great.
I wanted to thank you for your time, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate having the chance to you know, talk about things like inspiration and what you read, what you write, you know, so
Yeah, it's great being able to meet the writers and the people who are involved with the book, and I'm looking forward to it coming out in November. And
yeah, so am I. I'm so excited. And thank you for all the effort you've put into making this happen. I know it's been a big process and a long process, but yeah, I think it's great what you're doing.